Hey everybody, Brett Rice, coreVISION Financial Group. Coming to you today with another video in our series on financial topics. Go to our YouTube page and subscribe so you're notified when we post a new video. Today I'm going to be joined by Andrea Lee and we're going to talk about 529 to Roth rollovers. Thanks for joining us, Andrea.
Hey Brett, thanks for having me. I am Andrea Lee. I'm a financial advisor here with coreVISION Financial Group. And today we're going to talk about something that's fairly new, which I think is exciting, just having another option. I really feel like 529s have come a long way from when they hit the market in the beginning. So it's really nice to have all those options that they have given us, I guess. Yeah,
because you're right? Originally, when you first start talking to people about 529s, they're like, well, what happens if my kid doesn't go to college?
Right.
Does it cover this? Does it cover, So I think you're right. It has, the scope of it has gotten a lot wider. So, now it's covering trade schools. It's covering, a lot more things than it did before.
Elementary private schools.
Yep.
So many things, right?
Yep.
I was excited about that option. And obviously you could always change your beneficiaries to grandchildren or whatnot if you were one of those lucky parents whose kids got a full ride scholarship and
right.
You just didn't need it, right? That's what we all hope for. So now, an even better option, I really think this is great because you and I think I feel like we beat it into every young person's head, save early, right? So this is that opportunity. 529 now gives the option if there are quite a few rules, and we'll talk about those. But
there's a bunch of rules.
There are. But they give you the option to transfer that 529 into a Roth IRA. So that beneficiary has the opportunity to start saving for retirement, which, what an awesome option.
Right, because a lot of people go, well, what happens to the money that's left over?
Right.
I mean, no matter where you're at on that spectrum of, how much money your kid's going to spend at college, there has historically been a risk you'll have some money left over in that.
Right.
And, historically it was, well, you then take it out, but you pay taxes on the growth. There were rules around that. But now, there are still, like you said, a lot of rules around this, and it's still a little gray. So let's get into some of these new rules and some of the things we need to be aware of.
Sure.
As we're planning to do this.
So each beneficiary, and kind of touching on your point, so in my recommendations prior to this option, I would kind of recommend people not overfund their 529s because I didn't want them to have money left over. So we may create another bucket of funding for college just to avoid that happening. Now I feel a little different about that because if there is money left over, there's a different option. So now each beneficiary can transfer up to $35,000 into a Roth. Now each beneficiary means each person, right? So if you have 3 children and you have a 529 for each child, that would mean each child could transfer $35,000. So that's a decent chunk to get them started toward retirement.
For sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of rule 1, if you will. The other rule is that you have to have had this 529 established for 15 years. And the reason behind that is they want to make sure that you're not, cheating the system. You've got to at least prove that the purpose of it was for college savings. But again, if you've got a rock star and they're just killing it and they get a scholarship, they also don't want to punish that child, I guess, in a sense. And so they want to reward them as well and make sure that money gets used in a beneficial way as well, which I think is awesome. Rule 2, it has to at least been established for 15 years before you can start any funds being transferred over. You are also subject to that contribution limit, which typically increases each year. So for 24, it's $6,500 a year. That will increase typically each year. So whatever that contribution limit is for the year, you are at that limit. So if you're $35,000, you just can only transfer that chunk that year.
So the $35,000 is going to get moved at the current rate of $6,500 a year. So it's not all going to happen at once. It's going to sit there for a minute. At first I was like, why in the world would they limit the $6,500? But I think it's like you just touched on. It's to ensure these accounts were originally set up for educational savings and not somebody trying to go around the Roth income limits or something like that so they could say short term and then move all of it at once. Right. And then, I think it's just to say, no, it would initially was set up for higher educational expenses. And then we're saying, hey, we're going to have the benefit of this. But you're going to have to go through some hoops. You're going to have to work. You're going to have to remember to move that $6,500 every year. It's not going to be super easy. So that way people skirt around the rules.
We're not going to make it easy on you, but we also don't want to punish you.
Right. Because, this is a pretty significant step, right?
Absolutely.
Great option. It really is a great option.
The other nice thing about this transfer is there is not a rule on income. Whereas Roths typically have the phase out for income restriction and the transfer doesn't.
Yeah.
So nice benefit there.
Yeah, especially if you're talking about somebody who gets out of college at say 24 years old, goes out, gets a job, say they get married there and their spouse are making more than the income limit. Well, you just gave them a significant head start by at 24, 25, 26, 27 years old, putting $6,500 in a Roth for them that they're going to let sit there for the next 40 years. Hopefully they can contribute to it, but they may not be able to. So then you're that's still going to leave them a significant chunk of money.
Right.
Briefly, let's just kind of talk about what the steps are for transferring a 529 plan to a Roth, because most people are going to be unfamiliar with them.
First, you need to see how much is in your account. Right? What's left over, what's available, find out what's on your balance. And then you've got to figure out what your eligibility is. So if there's anything over that $35,000, you got to figure out, I guess, if you're going to change the beneficiary on that portion, to figure out something different.
Do we know, could you transfer the first $35,000 to one beneficiary and then change the beneficiary's name to somebody else?
I would have to look more deeply into that, but it would not surprise me if you change it because they like rules. It wouldn't surprise me if that 15 years would start over with that beneficiary.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked.
I've seen a lot of financial advisors on social media asking those type of questions, and there's no answer.
Yeah.
They're saying it's unclear from the IRS.
Probably.
Whether that 15 years starts over or not. I want to say the research I've done says it doesn't start over. So then it's it gets real muddy of
if it's not stated, then I would think that they couldn't, until they state it, you'd be grandfathered.
Yeah, because all it says is the account has to have been open for 15 years. It doesn't say that beneficiary needed to be on that account for 15 years. But those rules all could change tomorrow.
Right.
These things are very new, and there's, like I said before, they're still a little gray on what these actual rules are.
Well, yeah, they will add as they realize there are things that they have
missed. Yeah, for sure.
So then you'd want to get with an advisor and help, have them help you navigate through that whole process, get that Roth opened, and then initiate the transfer, and then start that contribution process, because obviously that's a long-term process to get in place. Not years. That it's difficult. It's something that we do pretty regularly in other ways. So it's just a different funding source now, being a 529.
So then you also still need to consider whether the Roth is your best option, right? Looking at tax benefits, the flexibility of a Roth account, right? Because you put it into a Roth and then they want to get at those funds, they're under 59.5. They're going to, pay a penalty for that.
Well, right. You do bring up a great point. Let's say I graduate from undergrad school and we transfer funds into a Roth, and then I decide that I want to go to grad school. You can get those funds back. There are Roth 529s as well. So there are ways, but it's just something to really think about. You don't want to just assume and then make it harder on yourself to get that funding back.
Right.
So yeah, making sure that the long-term plan.
Yeah, because you're talking, say you graduate college, maybe you don't make the decision right away what you do with it, because 2 years later you might be like, oh, I'm going to go to grad school now. And then you're like, okay, this money's still in the 529, as opposed to being like, oh, we've already put 2/3 of it's already moved over to the Roth. Now I'm like, oh, okay, now what do I do? So you could be creating a lot more work for yourself.
Right. The investment options are much more flexible in a Roth, so that would be another reason if you don't need the funds for college expenses. Absolutely, that would be a benefit to moving it to a Roth, is just the flexibility in your investment options. Obviously, the long-term investment, working towards your estate planning and all of that, like we're looking long-term now. These would be reasons.
For sure.
The benefits of moving it. And then retirement savings. I mean, start early.
Yeah, for sure.
Compound interest is your friend. So
40 years to set in a Roth. Talk about a heck of a gift to your beneficiary.
Yeah.
I'd like to do the math on that. I wonder what that becomes. Say no additional contributions, 6.5% growth for 40 years, what that becomes. And you're like, this becomes my gift to you.
Yeah.
And you're like, that number could become very large.
Yeah. I hope that my sons are accurate in their prediction of the future, because they both are under the impression that they are getting scholarships. One of them thinks for not only athletics, but also academics, he's getting scholarships. I hope he's right.
Yeah.
He's young. But if he is, what a heck of a graduation gift for me to be like, oh, here you go.
Here's $35,000.
Yeah. Which I don't know that I'll have that much in his 529 by then.
Right.
I started theirs a little later. But I can continue to fund that. That's the other side of it, right? I can continue and get my tax savings and continue to fund them.
Yeah.
And then just siphon that over into those Roths.
As this has been around for a minute, there are now strategies coming out like that. That's like, hey, look, I started saving late. Well, it's like, if you still want to get the tax credit, which we need to touch base on the tax credit. Mm-hmm. So some of the states give you a tax credit or a tax deduction for the contributions you make to the 529. So there's a lot of talk, and it's unclear specifically, whether states are going to try to claw back that tax credit, whether they're going to tax the rollover. I mean, there's a lot of unclear things about this that as time goes, they're going to work themselves out. So we have to be aware of that. We have to talk to tax professionals. We got to talk to financial advisors. We got to talk to people and be like, hey, what's the current status of this? As we're getting ready to do this rollover to Roth, is it going to be taxed by the state? Are they going to try and claw back my tax credit? Or, there's several things that have to be researched and, talk to professionals on to make sure that you're just aware of all those things.
Well, and that you have the latest data,
Yeah.
because it's ever changing. Absolutely. But currently in the state of Indiana, you get a 20% tax credit for your contribution up to $7,500.
That's a huge number.
Deal.
Yeah, it's a huge number.
So
you talk about making a significant impact on your state taxes.
Yeah. And it's not a deduction, it's a credit.
It's a credit.
So that in itself is giving this option really makes that even better, in my opinion.
I mean, you talk about a heck of a benefit while you're accumulating money for your child for secondary education. That tax credit can be huge every year. Mm-hmm. I mean, historically, I've always paid Indiana state taxes until I started contributing to a 529.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a significant, the credit, like you said, not the deduction, the credit is huge.
Yeah. Well, and I have so many parents that want to start saving for their kids in some capacity, or they know it's important that their kids are saving, but their kids don't know it's important yet. And now I feel like this gives them that opportunity to kind of put those things in place and those plans in place, so that when their kids do kind of click that on and they're like, oh, I get it now, that's already established. What a great way to kind of start out your young professional life.
For sure. So anything in closing? Anything you want to touch on, talk about?
Save early.
Yeah.
Invest early.
Get the state tax credits. Pay attention to the news on 529 to Roth rollovers. Talk to professionals about them.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of resources out there. Be careful your source when you're researching on the internet.
Yeah.
Just double check. Check multiple locations is all I can suggest. And talk to professionals in person or on the phone, just to try to get as much information as possible, because this is very new.
Right.
somewhat gray, unclear how it goes forward.
And we cover the investment portion of this. We aren't tax professionals.
Correct.
So, we have to get with tax professionals on that portion of it. And so it really becomes a team. And together, we really can kind of come up with the strongest strategies.
Well, thank you for joining us today,
Thanks for
Andrea.
having me.
We really appreciate it. Again, Brett Rice, Andrea Lee, coreVISION Financial Group. Go to our YouTube page, subscribe, be notified when we post new videos. Again, thanks for taking the time to be with us today to learn about 529 Roth rollovers. We really appreciate it. Thanks again.